Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We are here representing Achieving the Dream, and in this session, Don't Go It Alone, Strategic and Practical Guides to Partnerships. I'm Stephanie Davalos. I'm the Director of Gateway to College Network Supports at ATD, and I'm joined by my colleague Nick Mathern, and we're really thrilled about the reception Dr. Stout got this morning to the work we've been doing to help our community colleges across the country become catalysts for equitable, anti-racist, and economically vibrant communities through robust partnerships. And what we hope to do with you today is to really give you a chance to take some of what we heard from Dr. Stout this morning and apply it to your practice, and apply it and to sort of really engage with the content of the tools that we've created related to dual enrollment, so that it can inform your strategy as you bring this work back to your communities. So ATD we work with some amazing colleagues at Achieving the Dream who come from the field of community colleges with support around data, equity, leadership, holistic student supports, pathways, teaching and learning. And we're here today really focused on the K-12 work. Dr. Bobby Fry is here in the audience. She's on our team as well on the research and evaluation side. And we're really excited to bring the work that we've done in the Gateway to College model, a program that supports young people who are disconnected from high school, who have either dropped out or are off track, enroll full-time at community colleges, coming into the program roughly with a 1.9 GPA on average, and then really with robust holistic student supports, getting access to dual enrollment, college coursework, and a whole second chance at an academic future and a pathway. And so our work and that proof point of the Gateway to College Network is really informing our understanding of what it takes to build effective partnerships designed with equity in mind, and designed to create more access and completion for young people who get involved in dual enrollment in your colleges and in your communities. And so our question for today, and we really do want this to be a discussion, we want to hear from you. We'd love it if you would feel comfortable unmuting, being on camera, and really engaging with us around this conversation of how a strategic focus on K-12 partnerships can help your organizations, be they community colleges, nonprofits, or high schools and district systems, become catalysts for an equitable, anti-racist, and economically vibrant community. So we'd love to engage in the tool with you and give you a chance to try it out. You know, we all know that dual enrollment is driving community college enrollment right now, with about 40% of dual enrollment enrollment increases at community colleges taking being dual enrolled students, and that's data that was released this past fall. We also know that and I think that while that 40% of dual enrollment of enrolled students is happening, we also know that the programs aren't necessarily impacting. We know that students participating in college and high school programs are more likely to graduate high school and enroll in college and persist and complete a college credential. However, we know that the data is showing that some of the biggest positive impacts on dual enrollment participation is for low-income and unrepresented students. All right, so another question for you is, are you going alone? How robust are your partnerships? And so we've got some questions for you that are going to come out rapid fire. We want you to raise your hands and maybe be ready after we go through the questions to come off mute and discuss this with us. So how strategic and aligned are your K-12 partnerships? Is your college taking a comprehensive view of your entire portfolio of partnerships and aligning it to strategic priorities? How many of you would raise your hand on that question? Are you identifying and assessing existing barriers that impede access to dual enrollment in your programs? Would you give that a thumbs up, or maybe not so much? Is your college uncovering opportunities to increase equity within existing K-12 programs and partnerships? Are you recommending programs and strategies to increase enrollment and expand access for students who've not received a diploma or who are otherwise unlikely to matriculate directly from high school to college? So if anyone's willing to comment or come off mute, or in the chat, share your experiences with those prompts and those questions, we'd love to hear from you. How strategic and aligned are your K-12 partnerships? Got someone in the chat? No, so thank you, Tina. You're pushing for more than a vague memorandum of agreement with your high school partners, and it falls on the dual enrollment program at the college without much partnership work on the high school's part. How many of you have had that experience? You're doing the work, you're bringing the stuff to the table, but it's not being reciprocated. All right. All right, thanks for that comment. Okay, so now,
I wonder,
I
think we're going to see a few more comments here, and we've got a comment, Stephanie, from our friend at Portland Community College, Frank Smith, saying it's a work in progress. And Frank, if you want to give us anything about where you are in that work in progress, I'd love to hear from you about it. But while we're seeing some comments come into the chat, I think it'd be interesting to share something that we heard recently from a small college that is seeing a big percentage of their enrollments come through dual enrollment. And as much as I think they indicated over a quarter of the enrollments at the college overall are high school students, yet there are only 4 staff members who are working on dual enrollment college-wide. And so I think that's an area where we have to really consider our priorities institutionally. If we're going to see our enrollments being driven by high school students, then do we have the appropriate staffing there to support that?
All right, so let's move on, and we're going to now start to dig into the tool that Dr. Stout shared with you in her opening remarks. I'm going to, we want you to imagine in this session an aligned set of partnerships, aligned set of programs driven by that shared vision, the resources and the collaboration and equitable student success that we're all trying to move in our communities. And when you think about alignment and a portfolio approach to partnerships, we heard this morning the levels that we've identified of coordination between districts, nonprofits, community colleges. Often we see no coordination on one or more partnerships that operate between the college and the school districts, but they're not aligned or coordinated in a strategic way toward a shared goal. We might see at a level 2, there might be institutional alignment. College or the school district has aligned its partnerships under the umbrella of a common goal. Maybe there's a team dedicated to this. It's part of a strategic plan. We want to see this number of students getting access to dual enrollment over the course of their high school experience. We want to make sure our middle schoolers have a college bridge program. It's usually in that level 2, one institution taking the lead and assessing that portfolio. And more often than not, it's likely the college that's doing that work, although we do know some examples of early college high schools and other districts that have really fully committed to the idea of ensuring that their students are all college ready at graduation. And then at level 3, and this is not necessarily attainable for every community. Some of our college partners serve 10 to 15 districts. Others are in large urban areas and they might serve one, like in Chicago, for example. And in those communities where there's sort of equivalent partnerships, you can get potentially to that level 3 mutual alignment where both partners have jointly determined a goal. And they've really begun to envision a shared portfolio of programs and partnerships, and assess those regularly at the student data level to better understand how impactful they are and what course corrections they might need to make to help more students get access to these programs. I'm going to pass the mic now to Nick, and pause.
Hey, Stephanie, can we go back one slide for a moment? If we were doing this workshop in person, we might have an opportunity here for a pencil and paper exercise, and we're not going to do this with pencil and paper here, but what I would like to do is encourage those of you who have a kind of a idea of where you sit in your institution to think about how many different types of partnerships exist in your community between a college and a school district. So if you sit at the college, I suspect that many of us today represent a dual enrollment program. But do we know what other programs sit just to our right and to our left in terms of college readiness partnerships or bridge programs, early college, high school programs, CTE pathways that articulate from the high school to the college, or shared professional development? I'd ask you all to reflect for a moment on what the breadth of that portfolio looks like at your institution. And if you are able, and I'd love to invite people to either enter something in the chat or come off mute and share something with us about kind of what your portfolio looks like. So for example, if you are representing one particular type of partnership, but you are aware of other programs that represent the full portfolio of what your community is doing, I'd love to hear that. I'd also be interested to know if you're at an institution where, frankly, you don't necessarily know what else the institution is doing, because I think that that's probably more common than we'd like to admit. And I think it's important for us to address where those gaps are. We'll take a look as we are doing this at the chat, and it looks like we've got one person indicating they're representing early college and dual enrollment and involved with early college and career and tech. And I'm curious, while we're asking you to reflect, I also love for people to just reflect on whether or not you have a sense of your institution, whether you are representing the college or a school district, whether you've got what you would consider to be a full portfolio, or whether or not you've got substantial gaps in terms of the types of partnerships that you offer in your community. Love to hear from folks on that question.
So this is Lori Priest, and I serve at Pitt Community College in North Carolina. And we do have a high school programs area that encompasses career and college promise, our early college high school reports in that area. And then we also have our career coaches that report in that area. But then outside of that high school programs area, there are also many other high school entities, like our Visions program that serves at-risk students that are trying to transition from high school to college. And that program serves about 100 students. We have our Minority Male Success Initiative, that's another. Our TRIO program, that's another. So those are just some of the areas that we have at Pitt.
Thanks, Lori. I think it's really helpful and important to understand that you may have, as you do in your community, multiple partnerships that expand beyond kind of what one department might be able to manage. So having awareness and visibility organization-wide about what the impact and aim of each of those programs is really crucial. Frank, I think I saw a hand from you.
Oh, thank you, Nick. I guess since folks are sharing, and Nick has history with Portland Community College, so he probably knows this better than I do. We have representation in most of the categories shown on the screen, but historically, it felt like many of those programs were kind of siloed, not intentionally, just because of workload and people just really focusing on being excellent at what they do. But I feel like over the last few years, we've been strategically making efforts to erode that siloing and start getting a better understanding of what our colleagues do so that we can collaborate more effectively together in supporting our K-12 partners. But that said, it's a work in progress.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, I appreciate that, and have seen some of the good work that's happening at PCC. And then we've got a comment from Victoria at TC3 about the fact that she's got a department that houses, it looks like, all of the kind of various ways in which high school students would be taking college courses, including serving incarcerated youth, which is I think an impressive thing. Victoria, I don't know if you want to say anything about that in particular.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, when I first started here at our college, things were more siloed, and what we realized pretty quickly was that in order to best serve the population, we decided to kind of combine all the programs under this one brand, this College Now, based on the audience, figuring, we would emphasize what we knew in terms of like putting the student first and what their needs are, and then everything else kind of falls naturally into place. And so the incarcerated youth, this is in like youth detention facilities in our area, and so we do concurrent enrollment. We work with them to allow them to take online classes with us. We have had cases of faculty going out to the facilities, though that has been more difficult to do. But yeah, that's something that's actually become kind of a growing interest since in New York State they've had a raise the age movement. So now we're seeing more and more youth in the facilities who are at that age of being ready to be looking at college opportunities.
Exciting. And I see a crucial question from Wendy Pearson, and Wendy, I don't want to disregard this question, but I will say I think that that will be something that we'll talk about here in a moment, and I'll just give a preview, which is to say that I think the challenges you're facing in terms of getting engagement with your high school faculty is largely going to come down to aligned leadership and leadership from multiple institutions to really make this a shared vision. And so if you want to say more about your particular challenge, I invite you to do so, but I think that maybe we'll take that up here in a moment when we get to that discussion about the shared vision.
I also want to acknowledge the pain point in the chat, which is the sort of one person for 3,000 students in dual enrollment, and how do we begin to really staff these programs in a way that allows for the holistic student supports and the time and attention high school students need in order to really build those college readiness skills in your work. So thank you for sharing those data points in the chat. So let's and just sort of as we move on, that we have a little bit of data to share with you, just to sort of put a finer point on the need for equitable access to dual enrollment, and given that our work comes from this expertise comes from working with the Gateway to College program and youth who have disconnected from the traditional high school in some form or fashion. We've been following Measure of America's research for a while as the Gateway to College network, and are really disheartened to see the rates shifting as a result of the pandemic of youth disengagement. So these are youth who are 16 to 24 years old. We had hit really low rates in 2019, some of the lowest of all time, because a lot of organizations and entities were working hard to re-engage young people, and we've seen some phenomenal success in that, and the pandemic really swept a lot of that work away. So it's important that we kind of keep in mind the fact that we have over 4,600,000 young people, 12% of the population of youth, disconnected right now. That means they're not working and they're not in any kind of academic context. And we've got to make this work relevant to them. And we've got to support.
Yeah, so and I think the point for me that comes from what Stephanie's raised here is that when we are designing dual enrollment programs, when we are designing partnerships with high schools, we have to understand that in many communities, as much as 10 to 15% of that high school age population is not actually enrolled at the high school.
Mhm.
And so if we are looking to create pathways to post-secondary that create supported on-ramps, we can't exclusively work inside of high schools. Obviously, high schools are going to be the domain where you're going to get a large number of students, but we've got to have other pathways that re-engage students as well. And I appreciated that we had a comment in the chat earlier that spoke to a college readiness program. I'm trying to scroll back up to see who was the institution that shared this, but one of our partners in the chat shared that they've got a college readiness program attached to a GED completion program.
Mhm.
So you're finding other ways to reach those students.
And just a few more points here as you think about how we need to find different ways to engage young people in this work. We're seeing, a real rise in youth mental health, this cognitive disability rate. How do you build in supports and ways to help students connect with you and ways that sort of break down some of the challenges that they're experiencing. And if you do want to look at this work and what's happening in your community, we encourage you to check out Measure of America's website. These are community-based data points that you can highlight on a map, and it's a great way to look at what's happening in your community and how to find those young people. It's also important to note that when we disaggregate for race and look at the data through that lens, disconnection is happening at much higher rates for Native youth, Black youth, and Latinx youth. And it's critical that we think about how we're building those bridges for those young people in our programming. All right.
Stephanie, I wonder if we could go back for a moment to the session or the slide that shows us the different elements of a college and high school partnership. So it's just one past this one.
Oh.
Yeah, here. For most of you, if you had a chance to participate in our keynote this morning with Karen Stout, you got a chance to hear her discuss this. But given that we're about to dig into this here as a group and give you an opportunity to interact with this, I wanted to kind of cue us up with a question about whether or not you are currently doing any type of evaluation or assessment of your local partnerships. And if you are doing that, I'd love to hear some examples of how you are assessing your local partnerships. In particular, since I think majority of us represent either early college, high schools, or dual enrollment programs, would love to hear what type of assessment you do of your dual enrollment in early college. Is it one that is simply quantitative, looking at numbers of students participating, numbers of courses taken, and numbers of courses passed? Or are you looking at other elements of the partnership as well? Obviously, you heard from Karen this morning as she described our framework with some level of depth about kind of each of these 6 elements: the shared vision, the depth of partnership, equitable access, student engagement, community engagement, and outcomes. But I'd love to know how that's manifesting in your communities. If you would either be willing to come, unmute your microphone and share that, or to share something in the chat. And got one comment here, looking at student surveys, grades. And student surveys are a great way to capture, the broad participation you have from your students. I saw a comment in the chat earlier that I thought was interesting. And it speaks to, I think, the challenge of recruiting students. And so this may be a question of both student engagement and also equitable access. The comment said that they are in a community, this commenter was in a community that doesn't offer a weighted GPA for dual enrollment courses, and therefore they have a difficult time kind of recruiting students to take dual enrollment courses, because, for example, I think many of us are familiar with the fact that in many cases, AP courses offer students an opportunity for a weighted GPA, or to earn a GPA that is above 4.0. And I would put a question to the group that kind of turns that idea on its head. We know that dual enrollment can be very attractive to students who are college bound and who are seeking an opportunity to apply to four-year universities, and some are applying to selective universities. So GPA and class rank is very important to them. But I would also suggest that for many students that who might be good candidates for dual enrollment, the real opportunity is the opportunity for them to test the idea of college and see themselves for the first time as a possible college student. And I would encourage us to think about who we really want to try to recruit to these courses, and what student population is less likely to get to college without our support. And so, for example, there are communities where a weighted GPA creates a lot of competition and demand among students who are already very likely to pursue post-secondary education. And that can sometimes actually be counterproductive if it takes the limited staff capacity of the college or the high school away from doing outreach to students who might not be otherwise college bound. So there are kind of two sides to that particular question. See, there's a couple of other comments that have come in the chat. I want to take a look to see if any of those are looking at elements that we want to consider. So we're looking at head count by school and district, credit counts, demographic data, and developing a survey. Okay, so we have a variety of ways in which people are measuring their participation in dual enrollment. And we see an example here of a charter school partnership and using the dual enrollment playbook. And so that's a reference to a tool that was produced by a partnership between Community College Research Center and the Aspen Institute a couple of years ago. It's a great resource, and I would encourage anyone who's doing dual enrollment to take a look at the dual enrollment playbook. If you just do a Google search for dual enrollment playbook, you'll find that tool online. It's free to access, and it's a really terrific opportunity.
I think, Nick, we should probably move now to we'd like to focus, share with you the questions we've developed under shared vision, depth of partnership, and equitable access as it relates to dual enrollment. So we've created a framework that gives communities a tool to really assess how you're doing on these 6 elements of strong and robust partnerships. And we're going to spend time together right now looking at the questions a few of the questions we've come up with for the top 3 on this list as it relates to dual enrollment. So I'm going to fast forward. If you'd like to if you want to use your phones to scan, this will download to your phone an overview of the tool and a blank rubric that you can use to sort of prompt discussion in your communities. And then we have an example of the tool in action that Dr. Stout spoke to how Wake Tech had used the tool. And this just sort of gives you a visual of you know, when we come in and do an assessment of a community's K-12 partnerships and how they're organized, we might flag whether or not the College Bridge program, for example, has a shared vision. If it's shared between all the different parties and the students involved, how deep is the partnership? How equitable is your access? And you can see some of the programs have different areas of strength and different areas to work on. And so we present a report based on our analysis and surveys that we take and the interviews that we do. But this is also something that we hope you can do for yourselves as you engage your stakeholders in making sure that your partnerships are as strong as possible. So here we go. We're going to dig into a dual enrollment program assessment, and we're going to share some of the questions with you. And as the questions sort of fly by on the screen, we want you to assess whether or not with a simple yes or no question, whether or not your partnerships align to the element that we're talking about. So we're going to move forward to shared vision. And, you know, we believe that having a shared vision among stakeholders is critical to the success of a partnership. Without a vision, you don't know where you're going. Without a clear message and something that sort of rallies everybody, it makes it really difficult to be consistent and to stay the course with resources and various other elements. So, and it's hard also for participants to understand why they're doing the work. So here are a few of the questions that we've come up with to help communities assess whether or not they have a shared vision. Is it stated? Is it explicit and public? And have we set a clear goal around post-secondary access? And is it shared by the K-12 folks and the higher education partners and any other partners in that community? So these are some of the highlight questions from the way we think about a shared vision. Love to hear from you where you rate your partnerships in terms of whether or not there's a shared vision for dual enrollment student success in your community. How many of you?
And I would say that, you know, we had a comment earlier from Wendy, and Wendy, you know, you were indicating that you're, you know, experiencing some, I think, difficulty with getting, you know, teachers bought in to the idea of participating in dual enrollment, and a concern that dual enrollment was going to, you know, put at risk FTE for teachers teaching these classes, and certainly we've seen that in other communities, and frankly, I think the only way to truly overcome that is when you've got a clearly stated plan at the leadership level that is inclusive of both the college and the school district, that indicates that we've got an institutional commitment to making this work. That doesn't necessarily erase those concerns or those challenges, but I think it goes a long way to establishing both an expectation and an appetite within a community for a lot of dual enrollment. There's a good example of a community in Orlando, Valencia Community College, and one of their nearby county. I guess it's not Orlando proper, but just outside, Osceola School District, which is the adjacent county. They developed a shared vision of dual enrollment that was specifically focused on increasing opportunities for economically marginalized students, and as a result, they put together an MOU that included a transportation fund, so that they would be providing transportation for students in neighborhoods that were lower income, in order to get them to campus for activities and to allow them to participate in dual enrollment there. So that's one example of that community specifically writing into their vision the strategy necessary in order to address a particular gap they were seeing. I think that there are a variety of ways in which a vision can articulate kind of a specific response to a community need, and would love to hear from others if there are examples. I think that you know, I think probably one of the most prominent or well-known of these examples is in the city of Chicago. There's a partnership called the Chicago Roadmap, which encompasses the breadth of partnerships between the 7 city colleges of Chicago and all of Chicago public schools in terms of their K-12 to college partnerships.
And that partnership, we were able to connect with one of the leaders at last week's Dream Conference. She shared that they had leadership transitions at both the superintendent and the president level at the district and the college, and the work groups that had been established around that shared vision continued to do their work to strengthen the partnership and build the access points even within the transitions of leadership at both institutions. So that's a real testament to a community's commitment to that vision and to those goals. And Patricia, thank you for the comment about Durham and your work at Durham. Having a shared vision between the school district and the college, but not necessarily community-wide. So how do we get parents involved, students involved? How do we get teachers involved? And that community commitment is really important. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's keep moving on. And I love Elvin, thank you for back and forth. We've got Wake County weighing in the need to provide equitable access, but there's competition there as well with AP and career, I think CCP. Okay, so now we're going to move to depth of partnerships. So to put a little finer point on how deep and robust, how active are your communities engaging in the success of these partnerships? And this is, I think, the category where the rubber meets the road, where, are we really doing the work to keep the partnership healthy and to keep alignment and agreement between the practitioners and the students and the systems? So again, are you a yes or a no here? Or maybe we need a third column, sort of a maybe or in the middle. Is there data sharing? Is there collaboration related to curriculum alignment, participation rates, student success, and student readiness standards? Are you looking at student level data as a community to really inform what courses students are having success in and what not? How are you doing shared professional development and training? Are there counselors in the from the college embedded in the schools? Are faculty teaching courses and as full standing college instructors? And are they having relationships with their professional counterparts at the college? And we've got a few more of these, but just in general, this gives you sort of a sense of what we mean by depth of partnership. Really collaboration across disciplines, across systems with the student's success in mind. And then
This, I think, is one of the areas where a partnership can both be really tested, but also really come to life. So, for example, Community College of Denver recently, and a few years ago, implemented co-requisite supports for students who are underprepared to take their gateway math and English courses. Well, that doesn't necessarily always translate so well for dual enrollment students. And so the college and high school both assigned faculty who spent a year working on a curriculum alignment plan to identify a strategy for how you would implement those co-requisite courses for high school students. And there's a lot of ways that this can manifest, whether it be through co-requisite courses or through what have been typically called transition courses or mirror courses that reproduce and replace the old developmental education sequence that we've gone away from in so many instances. But it really does take a commitment of both institutions in order to provide faculty the time to do this important work. I would love to hear any other examples that you all have, around collaboration between faculty or other investments around the partnership. And Elvin, I see a great example here about a professional development series for high school and college faculty. So that's really exciting around admissions and registration. That's great that you're doing that.
And Elvin, feel free to come off mute and share any details that you think might be relevant.
Yes, how's everyone doing? Elvin James, Associate Dean of Outreach at Wake Tech. Let me see if I can get my camera on here.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So yes, I know we're a little biased because we've been part of the landscape analysis, so you didn't want to take too much from the presentation. But yes, as part of those partnership and collaboration efforts, we saw that there's a true need on both sides of the spectrum, both at the college, within departments as far as knowledge base, but also on the high school side as well. When we talk about faculty and those that aren't, in the true depths of the ins and outs of dual enrollment. So what my team did, including myself, like I stated in the chat there, we developed a professional development series that addresses, what CCP is, the barriers that we face, but also at the same time, teaching faculty, high school staff on the ins and outs of how to assist students in the event that we're not available to be there for information sessions or being able to assist students on a one-on-one basis, across the board. So that is something that, again, we've just launched. We've had great success. We're taking we're currently taking or receiving information from surveys in regards to those results in terms of how the training is going or how they felt about the training. And thus far, we've received some great results. So again, this is a work in progress. This is something that we plan to offer annually. So it'll be ongoing, but again, something that I feel that would be very beneficial, not just for us, but any school district that is utilizing dual enrollment as well.
What a great example, and it really shows, how you're leveraging resources, right? Like this idea of not going it alone. Like there's personnel at the high school. Like you just have to empower them and equip them with the understanding, the awareness, so they can effectively guide students to you and to these robust experiences. So
Yes,
thank you for
thank you.
sharing.
And Les, Nick, you made a great point earlier about sustainability. That's one of the key issues that we faced for a long time. I'm assuming not just for us, but for others as well. So, like you said, Stephanie, utilizing those resources to, make an impact in some way so that we can best serve our students, families, and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you, Elvin. I'm going to keep moving us forward because I want you to engage with the equity questions, equitable access, because this is definitely an area historically where dual enrollment has fallen short, but I know there's a deep commitment on all of our parts to get this right. And so here are some questions for reflection on equitable access. Have you set specific targets for reducing or erasing equity gaps in dual enrollment? Is that a part of your agenda? Have you preceded dual enrollment with college readiness programs in the earlier grades? So participation isn't simply about who shows up or who's ready, but there's intentionality in building those skills for students from the, middle school or sooner. How representative are your faculty teaching students in dual enrollment classes? Are your courses culturally responsive? Are you working together with your partners to reduce the impact of high stakes placement testing or minimum academic requirements like that 3.0 GPA that are excluding students? Have you started to use alternative or multiple measures to determine eligibility, like high school grades? Are dual enrollment courses offered broadly across the curriculum and disciplines that appeal to students and that align with meaningful pathways? Faculty, I think I've got that one in there twice, representative students. And then, are you removing financial barriers? Is there a cost of textbooks or tuition or fees? How are you working to reduce those barriers? And would love any comments from all of you about how this is working out in your communities.
Stephanie, while we're waiting for folks to think about the examples from their communities, I'll share a couple that I think are interesting and come to mind. You know, this piece about faculty being representative of the communities. I think we've heard from multiple communities in the past that it can be very difficult when you've got small staff or limited faculty pool to field someone that is representative of your student population. There's one program that we were supporting that was facing that exact challenge. They were offering a dual enrollment program that was working specifically with a population that was primarily young people of color, and they had a white instructor in the class, and they didn't have another instructor in that field who was available to teach the course, that that was more representative of the student's experience. But the college met that challenge by identifying a TA, a student who had previously been successful in the class, and paying them a small stipend to be a part of the class and to act as both a liaison to the students and also an assistant to the instructor. And so that was one creative way that community really was able to address that. I think we've also seen people remove financial barriers in a lot of ways. For example, if you're in a state that doesn't offer funding to cover the cost of textbooks, or if your school district is not covering the cost of textbooks, OER, or open education resources, is a great way to do that. And we've seen multiple colleges reduce the cost of textbooks for high school students by using OER. We've also seen colleges, if you're in a state like North Carolina, like Ohio, or Florida, there sometimes are opportunities to pursue waivers. And so the state of Ohio has an opportunity to have an innovative program waiver that would allow you to waive the GPA requirement of high school students participating in dual enrollment courses. And so if you're in a state that similarly has a barrier in terms of a GPA requirement for students to participate, I think it's worth looking at what are some strategies to work around that. Either, can you seek a waiver for that policy, or are different types of courses more accessible? So for example, in the state of Florida, where there's a GPA requirement of 3.0 to participate in dual enrollment, CTE courses don't carry that same burden. And so you might be able to get a more equitable representation of students in your CTE courses than you might in what would be considered an academic transfer level course. So those are just a couple of examples, but I'd love to hear from others around the room about examples that you've seen to be effective in terms of increasing equity in dual enrollment.
We all are also coming up on time, so we can keep the conversation going, but if you'd like to meet with us and follow up with what you've heard here and pick our brains about your context, we'd love to meet with you. And this will get you a link to our shared calendar, so you can schedule some time with Nick and I if you'd like to follow up and discuss what we've learned here and how we might help you in your work.
Could you post your slides somewhere?
Can we post our slides? I think the conference we'll share the slides so we can get those to you as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We should double check about that. But I don't know if any of the conference organizers are in the room. Anika, are you able to tell us, or can we post our slides to the platform?
Yes, you can definitely post your slides, and then participants can log on to the conference website just like they are today within 1 to 2 business days to access the recording and also the documents.
Awesome.
Terrific, thanks.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
And I see that Lauren Jones has posted a question about the challenges with accreditation relative to finding faculty who are credentialed to teach, and that certainly is a barrier. I'll put in a plug for one of the other seats that we sit in through the College and High School Alliance. If you are looking for good resources regarding teacher accreditation questions. The College and High School Alliance website offers, I think, a great set of resources to kind of what the best thinking is in the field around those questions. And Maggie Haley asked the questions about developmental courses offered prior to dual enrollment. I know that we're at time, but Maggie, if you want to stick around, I'd be happy to discuss that. I don't know if I have a specific answer for you, given that I'm not representative of a college, but I can speak to a couple of examples we've seen, and maybe others in the room could speak to work that they've done to help students to be kind of ready for dual enrollment.
There's a charter school example in Massachusetts, New Heights Charter in Brockton, that has really worked collaboratively with Massasoit Community College to ensure that students are doing the math as they go through the high school program. It's aligned completely to the college's math, and the college department heads helped articulate the curriculum, and they meet regularly, and it's been a game changer for students. Many of their graduates are earning associate's degrees at graduation, and the math department chair at the college that we interviewed a few years ago, I think he might have retired, but he was on fire about how prepared students were, and it made his work even better. So that kind of alignment work is really powerful, and that's a very robust partnership.
Yeah, this is a great example. Another good example from Tompkins Cortland up in New York. They're saying they're not allowed to register high schoolers for developmental courses, and that's true in many states. But they allow concurrent enrollment courses to run an entire year. So you're essentially doubling or more the amount of instructional time, and then therefore the support that is available. And essentially that gives a similar impact to having a co-requisite course for those high school students. That's a great solution. Anytime you can do something like a co-requisite course. So for example, if you've got a college course that would typically meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if you've got that high school time on Tuesday and Thursday when you can have additional instructional time with students, that's one way that some communities have addressed this question. There are a variety of ways that you might do that. Certainly in some communities, this has really been about having a broader college readiness framework and saying we're going to use this college readiness framework to prepare students in the earlier grades, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and ensure that they are getting content and curriculum that is preparing them for college coursework. An important element of that is that deep partnership that we talked about earlier. So giving high school and college faculty an opportunity to sit down together and talk about what are the competencies required for those gateway level or kind of entry level math and English courses where there tends to be a prerequisite. And so that's another strong example. I know that we're well past our time here, so I should zip it so that people can get their break before the 1 o'clock session, or 11 o'clock as it were in the West Coast.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us and sticking around through the end here, beyond the end. We hope this has been helpful, and we're excited to support your leadership in this work and help you to strengthen your partnerships. And so take good care. We'll see you in the next sessions, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all for joining.